Vous avez écrit un livre sur l'érotisme. Est-ce que l'érotisme en littérature est un enfantillage, selon vous?
Je ne sais pas si la littérature se distingue de l'érotisme en général à cet égard, mais il me semble qu'il est très important d'apercevoir le caractère enfantin de l'érotisme dans son ensemble. Est érotique quelqu'un qui se laisse fasciner comme un enfant par un jeu et par un jeu défendu. Et l'homme que l'érotisme fascine est tout à fait dans la situation de l'enfant vis-à-vis de ses parents. Et il a peur de ce qui pourrait lui arriver et il va toujours assez loin pour avoir peur. Il ne se contente pas de ce dont les adultes vraiment sains se contentent. Il lui faut avoir peur. Il lui faut se retrouver dans la situation où il était enfant et où il était menacé constamment d'être grondé, même très sévèrement, d'une façon insupportable, intolérable.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're going to talk about Georges Bataille. I can't even say that with a straight face. So I guarantee you this will not be monetized, and I will be careful so it's not removed by YouTube. Georges Bataille, some people out there, they find him useful, they think his philosophy is great, whatever. I think he's an absolute degenerate. There's not much value to him. That's my personal opinion. Now you know what that is. Let's go ahead and talk about this man. Because it will be demonetized, I will have a PayPal in the description. If you want to give me a $5, that would be nice. So Georges Bataille in particular takes a lot of inspiration from Marquis de Sade. I made a video on Marquis de Sade if you want to watch that. And he kind of builds upon de Sade's writings and tries to formulate more in the modern world. So there is a few different forms this type of philosophy takes place. We're going to talk about his materialism, but just let's talk about this other thing first. In the way Marquis de Sade formulated human behavior, he formulated if one is given enough power or enough freedom to do whatever they want sexually, this will then degenerate into the worst thing you can possibly imagine. Georges Bataille also goes into this idea. His more pornographic texts, Story of the Eye. Let me give a summary of the text here. The Story of the Eye is a novella about a nameless man reminiscing about his sexual escapades with his lover Simone as an adolescent. After they masturbated together without physical contact, the narrator goes home and masturbates over the day's events. Upon telling this to Simone on their next meeting, she gets upset and makes him a promise to never masturbate away from her again, which formally starts a sexual relationship. As the relationship progresses, the sexual acts they indulge in grows more and more grotesque. After getting caught having sex in the garden by a girl named Marcel, the pair forces Marcel to join while Simone masturbates. Later, apologizing to Marcel, the narrator and Simone invites her for tea at Simone's house. The pair invites other friends as well, and they end up drinking alcohol instead of tea. The whole evening devolves into an enormous orgy. Marcel hides in the wardrobe and begins masturbating in the wardrobe. The narrator checks on her in the wardrobe, and horrified in seeing the narrator covered in blood. Marcel has a nervous breakdown. While Marcel's parents arrive to the scene, she attacks her mother. The narrator decides to escape before the police arrives. He moves in with Simone, and they found out Marcel is locked up in a mental institution. The narrator and Simone try to help Marcel to escape, and manage to do so on their second attempt. During this time, Simone explores masturbating by shoving eggs inside of her vagina. When they bring Marcel to the house, Marcel recognizes the house and has memories of the horrifying party. She hides in the wardrobe that she was hiding in during the party, and hangs herself in that wardrobe. As always, instead of doing anything normal, they pull Marcel's corpse out and they have sex next to Marcel's corpse, taking Simone's virginity. The narrator and Simone escape from the criminal persecutions to Spain. There they meet Simone's friend, Sir Edmund, a rich aristocrat who is equally debaucherous. He tells them about the tradition of eating raw bull testicles whilst watching bull tournaments. So the pair goes to a bullfighting match, and as the bullfighter dies from the bull, Simone puts bull testicles inside of her vagina and has an orgasm. Afterwards, they go to a church, and Simone asks for confession. Simone starts masturbating inside a confessional and seduces the priest. Afterwards, she strangles the priest. After this, the narrator, Simone, and Sir Edmund escape again to Andalusia. And the point of this being, again, it goes back to Marquis de Sade's. It escalates. What once was interesting, which was just the idea of masturbating to somebody, became something that they both found interest in, and the more sexual activity they done, the more they want. They ended up, murdering people, shoving things where things should not be shoved, doing to priests, poor priests in Spain, reaching... Everything is happening with priests in Spain. You never want to be a priest in Spain, I'll tell you that one for a fact. And things just keeps going bad. And this is some sort of a psychoanalytic explanation of the human condition. How? If you're French, maybe. But, yeah.
C'est en mettant le lecteur devant cette perspective désagréable qui crée une tension que la littérature évite d'ennuyer le lecteur.
I should also quickly point out that Marcel is based on his mother. Yeah, fuck's sake. What a guy. There is a movie that's attempting to tell the story of the eye. Here is it scene by scene, without leaving anything out. Stock footage of a woman giving birth while the narrator reads a brief biography about Georges Bataille. 2 guys having sex. 2 women having sex. Girl stumbles up flight of stairs for like 15 minutes, while other woman screams from somewhere. Girl pisses on the floor, stares out filthy window. 2 girls and some guy have sex. 10 to 15 minutes of black screen and electric noise. The end. We're done with sexual things. God killed me. Smite me. No, don't. That was painful. So that's a lot of his books is about that. This is just a short story he wrote. One short story. You think, oh, well, it's just one book. And no, his entire repertoire is pretty much this. There is others where it goes into materialism again. But the way he forms these stories, and the reason why he does this, is to explain it from a surrealistic perspective. So it is eroticism, or pornography in certain aspects, but it's surrealistic eroticism. Everything is symbolic, everything is symbolic and a representation of something in the real world. So the bull, egg, the rest, it's some sort of a symbol to the real world, but it's done through something that is never real. Like the stories here isn't him thinking this exactly can be real, but it's him going through an unrealistic or surrealistic, something that is not of reality. It's part of reality, can be reality, but it's not really the reality we live in. And through that, he hopes that you understand psychoanalysis of human behavior. Kill me. So if I can get more into detail of aesthetic anthropology and sort of how this story is supposed to frame, how everything is in place, I think these type of stories are very detrimental. Yeah? I think people who read this and who read some of this stuff and goes, oh, well, it's actually... No, you're not doing it because it's actually that good. You're doing it because it's supposed to be. The issue I have with art, and especially if it's only based in subjectivity, which it mostly is that anything can be art. There is nothing symbolic or framing of reality through crushing an egg inside of a kush. It's not reality. Yeah, you can describe, well, this is the entire point of surrealism. Yes, that's the entire point of surrealism. But it's grotesque for the sake of being grotesque. The issue I have with surrealism, the reason why I'm not a fan of it, it can take any sort of form, and then you just say, oh, well, then it's artsy, regardless of what it actually is. Anything. Oh, a woman makes birth of a giant scorpion in her cooch. It comes out and starts writing things. Well, that is so deep and so part of... It explains the condition of man. It doesn't do anything. It's nonsense. It's when you're high on some sort of drug and you just want to write something for the sake of writing. Grotesque for the sake of grotesqueness. It's not... It's nothing that should be honored or something that should be having respect. There's an entire book series now of modern day writings that is so damning societally that people are in shock that these books are not banned. And they're telling you to do the most immoral actions you can possibly think of. And the reason is, and very importantly, these ideas has to be mocked. Let's take a grotesque concept. Maria the Witch. You know, I made a video on her a long time ago. The grotesque things she says in that video, or videos, plural, and the things she said should never, ever, ever, ever be awarded, which it was, by the way, because, oh no, poor woman, poor comrade, we gotta defend her, even though she has the most grotesque stake you can ever think of. And the reason why she says it's so grotesque is because you're basing it only on materialism. Like, if you remove any, well, don't. It's grotesque. You're doing it for the sake of just being grotesque. Don't do that. Don't praise that. Whenever someone writes that type of schmut, you should bully it. You should not allow it to be actualized in any form. In any form. And don't praise it. Don't fucking praise it. Don't say, oh wow, this was an intrigue. It wasn't an intriguing read. It wasn't. It was painful. They are the takes. And don't take me wrong, sexual stories can be very interesting. I read some of it, like some very interesting sexual stories. That's not the point. The point is, it's supposed to be some sort of psychoanalytic, surrealistic take on the human condition. But I'm sorry, it's surrealistic grotesquity for no apparent reason whatsoever. And just because you want to shag your mom does not make it right to write in a novel and to be praised. You degenerate. I do want to note one thing though. The first time I looked into the Bataille, I actually found something very fascinating. His wife. A Romanian Jewish wife, an actor. And she has shows. I'm showing her a film right now. I cut it up a bit because it's odd. But the reason why I find it fascinating is because when I looked into Bataille, I was like, alright, he's an interesting, wife. Let's look at the wife. Let's see what type of woman chooses a degenerate like this guy. Her name being Sylvia Bataille. Very pretty girl. And I looked, she divorced Bataille. And married Georges Lacan. Fucking, like, she marries Lacan. And like, holy crap, what a woman. Marrying two of the, like, top in French society. Oh, well, Bataille's not top, but you get my point. Very high up in French society. And I'm like, wow, Bataille got cucked. But I did more research into her. Her entire life is so fascinating. She was like part and saw all of the French degeneracy during the time. Postmodern ideas, just all there. She saw it all. And it's really not that much about her. She was very sidelined. And this is the issue with surrealism as well. I'm going to actually show you this quote. If you argue that Bataille is some sort of a feminist, no. The issue with surrealism, it's not really feministic. It shows you pretend to be feministic, but it still sticks with the same structures. It doesn't actually change anything for women. But obviously, it wants more female things, but it doesn't, in arts itself, it doesn't change anything. It's so fascinating. And in Sylvia's life, she was that person who was part of this movement, but she fit the frame. She didn't actually write much, she didn't talk much. She was very much in the shadows. She was everywhere, she saw everything, but no one has really looked into her more than just the shadow of men. Fascinating feminist figure, I think, and worth another deep dive. But I'll do that in another video, because she deserves a video of her own. Fascinating woman.